All right, welcome in, everyone. We're diving headfirst into the world of international trade, and things, well, they're a little spicy right now.
Yeah, spicy might be an understatement.
To say the least. It's March 2025, and we've got ourselves a full-blown trade war. And the guy who lit the match, none other than former President Trump back in the Oval Office.
Back with a vengeance, it seems.
He's slapping tariffs on some of America's biggest trading partners, Canada, Mexico, and China.
A bold move.
Absolutely. So what we're going to do in this deep dive is figure out what on earth is going on, why it matters to you, and what might happen next.
Right, because this isn't just some abstract economic theory.
Yeah.
This stuff have real-world consequences.
Absolutely. We've got a whole stack of sources here. Economic analyses, political commentary, the works. We're going to break it all down.
Excellent.
So let's jump right in. The big question on everyone's mind is what triggered this trade war?
Well, on the surface, it's all about fentanyl. Trump is accusing Canada, Mexico, and China of not doing enough to stop the flow of fentanyl into the U.S.
Right, the fentanyl factor. It's a serious issue, no doubt. But some folks are saying it's just a convenient excuse for Trump to push his protectionist agenda.
Right. Some analysts are suggesting that this is all part of a bigger strategy to shield American industries from foreign competition.
Interesting. So is this like a game of economic chess then, with some pretty high stakes?
Exactly. And to really understand what's going on, we need to look at the specifics of these tariffs. Canada and Mexico, they're facing a sweeping 25% tariff on all imported goods.
25% across the board. Wow. So imagine walking into the grocery store and suddenly your favorite Canadian maple syrup or Mexican avocados are a quarter more expensive.
That's the reality consumers are facing right now.
Ouch. That's going to hit people's wallets hard. Okay, so what about China? Are they facing the same 25% blanket tariff?
It's a bit more complicated with China. See, they were already dealing with pretty substantial tariffs from the previous trade disputes. Now, Trump has piled on an additional 20% on top of that.
So think about all the electronics we use every day. Smartphones, laptops, gaming consoles. Many of them are made in China. These tariffs are going to have a direct impact on their prices.
Absolutely. Those new gadgets, yeah, they're about to get a lot pricier.
So consumers are getting squeezed from all sides, but of course, these countries aren't just going to sit back and take it.
Oh, absolutely not. The retaliation has been swift. Canada, for instance, immediately countered with 25% tariffs of their own on $20.7 billion worth of U.S. imports.
Whoa, $20.7 billion. What exactly are they targeting?
They're being strategic. They're hitting industries and regions that are politically important to Trump. American beer and bourbon, for example. That's going to impact Kentucky, a state that's key for Trump.
So it's getting personal.
Oh, yeah. They've also targeted appliances. And get this, Florida orange juice.
Florida orange juice. Really? Why orange juice?
All about applying pressure where it hurts. These tariffs are often designed to inflict maximum pain on specific interest groups that have influence with the opposing country's leadership.
So it's not just about economics, it's about power, leverage.
Exactly. And Canada isn't stopping there. Ontario Premier Doug Ford, he's threatened to cut off nickel shipments to the U.S.
Wait, hold on. Cutting off nickel, that's huge. Nickel is a key component in electric vehicle batteries.
Precisely. This is a big move. Imagine the scramble for alternative sources and the potential impact on electric vehicle prices.
Yeah, this could send shockwaves through the U.S. electric vehicle market. Bold move by Canada.
It really shows how interconnected our economies are, how a disruption in one area can have ripple effects across entire industries.
So we've got targeted tariffs, retaliatory measures, and now this potential nickel cutoff.
Yeah.
What about Mexico and China? How are they playing their hands in this trade war?
Mexico, they're still kind of figuring out their response, but it's clear they're not going to take this lying down. Retaliatory tariffs are definitely on the way.
So more fireworks coming from Mexico.
Oh, for sure. Now, China is taking a bit of a different approach, a multi-pronged one, you could say. They've slapped on some extra tariffs of their own, 10% and 15% on certain U.S. imports.
Okay, hitting back where it hurts.
Right. But they're not just playing defense. They've also got these new export restrictions that are specifically targeting 25 U.S. firms. Some of those firms, they're being targeted because they've been selling arms to Taiwan.
So China's playing the long game here, it seems, using both economic and geopolitical levers in this trade war.
Exactly. They're thinking strategically, you know. They're willing to take some hits in the short term if it means achieving their long-term goals. It's kind of a classic China move.
So while everyone else is scrambling to react, China's already thinking 5 steps ahead.
It's like they're playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers.
Interesting analogy. So while we're all feeling the heat right now, China might actually come out of this stronger in the long run.
That's definitely a possibility. And it's not just about tariffs. China's also busy building relationships with other countries, diversifying their trade partners. They're trying to reduce their reliance on the U.S. market.
So this whole trade war could actually backfire on the U.S., pushing China to become even more independent.
It's a risk, for sure. Trade wars are tricky things. There are always unintended consequences.
This just keeps getting deeper and deeper. Okay, before we go too far down the rabbit hole of global geopolitics, let's bring it back to you, the listener. How is all of this going to affect your everyday life?
The most immediate impact, well, it's going to be your wallet. Get ready for higher prices on pretty much everything.
So everything's going up, groceries, clothes, electronics.
You name it. Anything that relies on imported components or materials. Think about cars, furniture, even your favorite snacks.
Ouch. Are there any specific items you think people should be keeping an eye on?
Smartphones are a good example. With those extra tariffs on Chinese imports, you could easily see prices jump by a couple $100. And it's not just the phone itself. Think about repairs too. Replacing a cracked screen or a battery. Those are going to cost you more as well.
So those budget smartphones might not be so budget-friendly anymore. What about other electronics? Any advice for the gamers and tech enthusiasts out there?
Yeah, gaming consoles, laptops, smartwatches, even those little Bluetooth speakers. Anything with electronics that's made in China. Be prepared for price hikes.
So is it all doom and gloom then? Are we all going to be broke and stuck with outdated gadgets?
Not necessarily. There are always ways to adapt, Businesses might start sourcing products from other countries to avoid the tariffs. It's all about finding ways to stay competitive.
So instead of everything coming from China, we might see companies shifting production to other countries with lower tariffs.
Exactly. This could really shake up global supply chains.
It's like a whole new world of manufacturing is opening up. So it's not just about where things are made, it's about how they're made. Innovation and efficiency are going to be more important than ever.
Absolutely. This trade war could actually force companies to be more creative, more efficient, to find new solutions.
So there's a silver lining? Maybe. But let's be real, most people aren't thinking about global supply chains when they're shopping. They're just looking at the price tag and trying to make ends meet.
Very true. That's why it's so important to stay informed about what's happening. Pay attention to those price changes, maybe consider alternative products, and definitely be prepared to adjust your spending habits.
Sound advice. Okay, let's shift gears for a moment and go back to Canada and Mexico. We've talked about their retaliatory tariffs, but are they doing anything else to respond to this trade war?
Well, like we mentioned earlier, that threat from Canada to cut off nickel shipments, that's a huge deal. It shows they're serious about using their leverage to put pressure on the U.S.
That nickel play is a real game changer. It shows how intertwined our economies really are and how actions in one country can have huge ripple effects on others.
No doubt. And it makes you wonder about what it means for these trade relationships in the long term. If countries are constantly using essential resources as bargaining chips, it's not exactly building trust.
Yeah, this isn't just about tariffs and dollars anymore. It's about relationships, trust, even global cooperation.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to understand the bigger picture here. This isn't just a fight between Trump and a few other countries. It's a symptom of something much larger. It's about shifting global power dynamics, changing geopolitical landscapes. It's pretty big stuff.
It's like we're watching the tectonic plates of the global economy shift right before our eyes, and this trade war is just one of the tremors.
I like that, a tectonic shift. And to understand where we might be headed, we need to look back at history,
Yeah.
What can we learn from past trade wars, and what might happen with this one?
Well, you've come to the right place because this deep dive is far from over. We'll be right back to explore the history of trade wars and what it all might mean for the future. Stick around. And we're back for the final round of our trade war deep dive. We've covered the tariffs, the retaliation, that wild nickel play, and what it all means for your wallet. But now let's zoom out a bit. What can history teach us about trade wars, and where could this one be headed?
Well, history's a bit of a mixed bag when it comes to trade wars. Some have been, disastrous might be the right word.
Disastrous, huh? Got any examples?
Oh, yeah. The Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act of 1930. It's often blamed for making the Great Depression even worse. Basically, they slapped tariffs on thousands of imported goods.
So kind of like what's happening now, but on a much bigger scale.
Right. and it triggered a wave of retaliatory tariffs from other countries. Global trade plummeted, and, well, you know the rest of the story.
Yikes. So trying to protect your own industries can really backfire. It's like shooting yourself in the foot.
Exactly. It often hurts domestic industries and consumers in the long run. It's a delicate balancing act, and history shows that getting it wrong can have a huge ripple effect.
Okay, so knowing that, what are the possible scenarios for how this current trade war might end? Is there any chance of a peaceful resolution, any hope at all?
Well, there's always hope, but it really depends on if everyone can, just chill out a bit.
Easier said than done.
Right. The best case scenario is that everyone comes back to the table, ready to negotiate a new trade agreement. Maybe some concessions on both sides, some tariffs get rolled back, and they figure out a way to deal with, the whole fentanyl issue.
So basically a return to diplomacy, a more cooperative approach.
Exactly. We might see a gradual easing of tensions, tariffs slowly fading away, more focus on finding solutions together, maybe joint task forces to tackle the drug problem, or more investment in border security.
That sounds pretty ideal. But let's be real, how likely is that? Everyone seems pretty dug in right now.
Honestly, it's hard to say. Someone's got to make the first move, extend the olive branch, and that's tough politically, especially with all the tough talk flying around.
It's like a big game of chicken and no one wants to blink first.
Yeah.
Okay, but what if no one backs down? What's the worst case scenario here? What are we looking at?
Well, in the worst case, this thing drags on, maybe even escalates. Tariffs stay in place, maybe even go up. That means more economic uncertainty, higher prices for everyone, maybe even job losses as businesses struggle to adapt.
So basically an economic Cold War. Everyone loses, but no one's willing to give an inch.
It's a possibility. And it could spill over into other areas too, make it harder to cooperate on global issues like climate change or pandemics, stuff that really needs global cooperation.
Right, because you can't exactly solve global problems when everyone's fighting over trade.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So this trade war isn't just about economics. It can have huge consequences for global stability and our ability to, work together to tackle the big challenges.
Okay, so we've got the best case scenario, the worst case scenario. Is there anything in between, like a trade war purgatory?
Yeah, there's a middle ground.
Yeah.
And it's probably the most likely scenario. Basically, this thing drags on, but without getting much worse. Tariffs stay in place, everyone feels the pain, but it's not a total disaster. A kind of stalemate.
Trade war limbo. Not great, but not the end of the world either. Okay, so zooming out even further, what does this mean for globalization? Is this the beginning of the end for free trade?
That's the big question, isn't it? This trade war is definitely part of a bigger trend. You see this backlash against globalization popping up everywhere. Countries are getting more nationalistic, more protectionist.
So are we headed for a world of closed borders, everyone going it alone? Is that what the future looks like?
I don't think it's that simple. Globalization has done a lot of good, connected economies, spurred innovation, lifted millions out of poverty. But it's also created some big problems. Job losses, inequality, environmental damage.
Winners and losers, right?
Exactly. The challenge now is to figure out how to make globalization work better for everyone.
So not an end to globalization, but maybe a reboot, a chance to fix the bugs and make it more fair.
That's the idea. We need a more sustainable, more inclusive model of globalization, one that benefits all countries, not just a few. And maybe, just maybe, this trade war is the wake-up call we need to get there.
Well, it's definitely given us a lot to think about. We've gone from tariffs and trade deficits to the future of globalization. It's been quite a ride.
It has. Hopefully it's given you, the listener, a better understanding of how all these complex forces are shaping the world around us.
We've talked about the players, the strategies, the possible outcomes. But as we wrap up, the big question remains. What will happen to globalization? Will we retreat into our own little corners? Or will we find a way to build a better, fairer global economy? That's something for you to ponder as we navigate these uncertain times. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.